Early on in the life of video games, they had little to no story, at least any story that was incorporated into the games. There were some that were incorporated into the manuals and some other outside sources, but none explicitly mentioned in the game. There are still some games that don't have stories. The mainland Mario games, for example, don't have a huge story focus. That doesn't mean the games aren't fun. In fact, the most recent Super Mario game had a great reception, but it does stand out nowadays, since games are attempting to have a bigger focus on story, for better or worse. Some people still seem to have the idea that video games are an art form on the same level as books or movies, though it's an opinion that's becoming less and less relevant as things like Game Awards become more prominent, giving these games and people who work on them the recognition they deserve. When video games with a focus on storytelling are mentioned, a game everyone thinks about is The Last of Us. While not the first video game with a good story, it is probably one of the most influential. Its cinematic atmosphere and realistic graphics, especially for the time, really helped it feel more like it stood side by side with the medium of movies. Some even deeming it the best story in gaming. Those people are stupid, but it's understandable. Now, I'm obviously joking. The Last of Us is a great game with a great story, and if you think it's the best story in gaming, then good for you. Keep it up, I'm proud of you. Personally though, while the story is good, great even, I find it to be quite simple in the grand scheme of things, which is overall good for the game itself, and the gaming industry in general. It helps stories become more prominent in gaming, but it still makes it feel like it could be doing more with its story. But hey, if it wasn't for The Last of Us, we probably wouldn't have gotten games like Red Dead Redemption 2, which, up until recently, was what I considered to be my favourite story in gaming. So what changed that? Persona 3 is the fourth installment in the Persona series. Made by Japanese developers Atlus and released in 2006 for the PlayStation 2, receiving an updated version only a year later in 2007 called Persona 3 FES. Then in 2009 it received a port for the PSP called Persona 3 Portable, which would be ported to all modern consoles in 2023, a year before the remake Persona 3 Reload would drop on February 2nd, 2024. There are also movies, manga, stage play, and a dancing game. With the exception of the dancing game, of course, the story remains pretty consistent throughout all versions of P3, though they do add certain things, like how FES included an epilogue story, and how Portable included a female protagonist route. I would like to talk about how Persona 3 compares to Persona 2, but I find it a little unfair to compare the two. Persona 3 is what molded the Persona series into what it is today, whereas Persona 2 is a completely different experience to modern Persona, especially because in Persona 2 one of the main antagonists is Adolf Hitler, but if you put sunglasses on him no one will notice. Persona 4 and 5 are much more comparable to 3, as they use the same format, but with their own twist on said format. I find 4 and 5 fail to outdo the third game in any way. That being said, they're both great games with a lot of things to appreciate about them. I just feel like Persona 3 is in a league of its own. So I should probably explain why I think that, and find out whether or not Persona 3 has the best story in gaming. But first, let's talk about the game itself.
Time is something no one can escape. Delivers us all to the same end. You can't plug your ears or cover your eyes. And so, it begins.
Again, crazy how time flies. When I wonder if the path is in the right direction. But I do believe things come to light by accident.
From now on,
When you remains
you're gonna have to live
sounds like it's meant
for
to
yourself.
be.
Wake up, the springs made when things fall apart. How you left them all.
You were true,
Fire in my heart.
a most remarkable guest.
Nothing easy, get up and go, get it go.
The Arcana is the means by which all is revealed.
No matter how far, how you go, how you go.
Thank you.
Gotta fix your light, go get it burning.
Persona 3 is a turn-based JRPG, focusing on the protagonists, who are either Makoto Yuki or Kotone Shiomi. Also, don't argue with me on the names, if I had it my way they would have been called Pooper and Stinker respectively. The protagonists find themselves awakening to the power of Persona. That's the name of the game. And they are told about the Dark Hour, a time where most people turn into coffins and the monsters known as shadows roam. There's also a tower where the school would normally be, known as Tartarus, where you and the rest of your team explore and fight shadows. Tartarus is where the main gameplay is, going through each floor fighting shadows in turn-based combat, where you use your persona's unique skills to defeat all kinds of different shadows. The protagonist has the ability to wield multiple personas, but your teammates only have a single persona. Speaking of your teammates, the team you join is known as the Specialized Extracurricular Execution Squad, or CES for short. The goal is to eliminate the Dark Hour and discover the mysteries of Tartarus. Throughout the game, you'll gradually gain more members, though you can only use 4 at a time, and one character is used for navigating instead of fighting. Tartarus is a lot more boring in the original game, all the floors look relatively the same and don't have much variety to them. The boss shadows aren't as well balanced as they are in the remake. The remake does Tartarus better in general, each block has its own unique aesthetic, and the gameplay is a lot more enjoyable. I'd even go as far to say it's the best turn-based gameplay in any game I've played. But enough about Tartarus and the Dark Hour, what about the rest of the game? Despite the weirdness of the Dark Hour and shadows, the rest of the game is just the protagonist living a normal life. Going to school, studying, hanging out with friends, joining clubs, and other relatively normal activities. The game has social links, which represents the bond between certain characters. Makoto and Kotone have some of the same social links, but also quite a few different ones, in order to have some variety between the routes, and to account for the differences between the characters. Kotone wouldn't hang out with Kenji, and frankly neither would I. The social links tell a unique story for each character, but you actively have to make an effort to go hang out with them, and some days they won't be available. Some social links only unlock through doing other social links, and others won't progress if you don't have enough points in a certain stat. The 3 stats in the game are Courage, Charm, and Academics. To increase Academics, you do things like studying, you can increase your Charm by going to a cafe, and Courage you can get by being a meaningless cog in the work machine. These mechanics help the player get immersed in the game, as it makes you actively think about what you want to do in your free time. Do you hang out with a certain character, or do you do an activity to increase one of your 3 stats? The choice is yours, and it makes you feel more involved in the game. You could even do nothing if you wanted to. You just go to bed. You can just do nothing.
I didn't do fucking shit!
The game follows a calendar system, and once every full moon a special shadow will appear, and it will be the boss fight for that month. The calendar system helps to give you a break in between big story moments, and allows you to learn more about your teammates and friends. The characters are told that defeating all 12 of these shadows will eliminate the Dark Hour, and eventually they are able to complete their goal. But the Dark Hour doesn't go away. It turns out the lovable goofball chairman Shuji Akutsuki was tricking them this entire time, and is trying to bring forth the end of the world. They defeat Akutsuki, but the team isn't sure what to do now, so they keep exploring Tartarus, until one day a transfer student shows up, who turns out to be death itself. And he tells them that the god known as Nyx will bring forth the end of the world. He says there's nothing they can do about it, and that even if they did do something, they'd forget everything afterwards anyway. The team moves forward, promising to remember each other, and they fight Nyx. Despite their attempts, they aren't able to beat Nyx, until the protagonist is shown the power of their bonds, and unlocks the Universe Arcana, and then uses it to seal away Nyx and save the world, ending the Dark Hour. Time fast forwards to the graduation. They don't seem to remember each other or the time at CES. Then, during the graduation ceremony, the team's memories return to them, and they all rush up to the rooftop to meet with each other one last time. The protagonist goes to sleep, and the game comes to an end. Now, that's a very simplistic summary of the story. There's a lot of character arcs and important moments that happen during the story, which we'll get into soon, but you do really need to play the game for yourself to understand the entire experience of Persona 3. So, now let's talk about the themes of Persona 3. Now, this may come as a surprise to some of you, but themes aren't just for 8th grade book reports, and they're actually very important to telling a good story with a message. I mentioned earlier that Red Dead 2 used to have my favourite story in gaming, and that's because the theme of that game is about what it means to atone for your past deeds, and it's explored in such depth, and it naturally implements itself into the story of Arthur Morgan, as well as some of the other characters in the game. All that to say is themes are vital to telling a good story. If a story doesn't have any good themes or messages, that's not a good story, that's an 8th grade book report. The themes of Persona 3 are a core part of why the story works so well, and the themes are something that everyone can connect to, because one of the main themes of Persona 3 is death. At the start of the story, it's made clear that the protagonist's parents are dead. This isn't anything new, protagonists have dead parents all the time, but it works well as a way to set up the themes of death, and does explain why the protagonists are the way they are. The protagonist isn't the only one with dead parents though. Their new roommate Yukari Takiba also has a dead dad, so they're able to quickly connect through that. I guess trauma bonding always prevails.
Hey!
Yukari's dad's death affects her in a much more prominent way though. The whole reason she joined SEAS was because she wanted to know how her father died, since he worked with the Kuriju group on some weird experiments involving shadows. Speaking of the Kuriju group, Mitsuru Kuriju is also a member of SEAS, and is the heir to the Kuriju group. Her grandfather is the reason Tartarus exists in the first place, and caused the incident that killed Yukari's father, and many others. Mitsuru's father feels guilty because of his own father's sins, which is why she's a part of SEAS in the first place. She only wanted to make her father happy and atone for the sins of her grandfather. More on that later though. For now, let's move on to the one and only Akihiko Sonata.
I've been waiting for this!
At first glance, Akihiko doesn't seem like that complex a character, and he seems like a generic strong dude character who likes to punch a lot. But it's the reason behind why he wants to become strong in the first place that makes his character compelling. When Akihiko was a child, he lived in an orphanage with his sister, and one day, the orphanage burnt down with his sister still inside. He blamed the incident on him not being strong enough to save his sister, which is why he's always striving to get stronger, so that if he's ever in a situation like that again, he won't be powerless to protect the people he cares about. I think you get the point now. The characters are all motivated by loss in some way or another. Even a character like Fuka, who isn't motivated by death, later on in the story her friend moves away. And whilst of course not as impactful as death, there's still a sense that she lost something. To get through some of the other characters real quick, let's start off with Ken. Ken is motivated to act more mature despite being a kid. He feels ashamed of his childish interests due to wanting to be seen as more mature by his peers. He also becomes motivated by revenge when he discovers who killed his mother. Then with Koromaru, he is motivated by the death of his owner, who was a monk, and he protects the shrine in honor of his deceased owner. And also because he's just a very good boy.
What the dog doing?
Junpei is initially only motivated by his desire to be a hero, but he always feels undermined by the protagonist since they are a lot more heroic than he is. However, he does try to move past this flaw of his. Despite falling back into his insecurities at times, he only starts to truly get past this flaw when he meets and falls in love with Chidori. But say it with me now, Chidori dies! She actually sacrifices herself for Junpei, which gives Junpei a motivation beyond just wanting to be a hero. He wants to make sure he lives on for Chidori. Now, time for the final character to talk about. If you've played the game, you already know we had to talk about him. Everyone get ready to kiss the cook, it's Shinjiro Aragaki. Now, Shinjiro is the odd one out when it comes to the main cast, because unlike the others who were motivated to be a part of SEAS because of someone's death, he left SEAS after an incident where he lost control of his persona and killed someone, and that someone happened to be Ken's mother. Shinjiro sees his life is over, he takes supplements that suppress his persona, and that will eventually cause him to die anyway. He doesn't really care about his life anymore, though he does rejoin SEAS later on. When he finds out that Ken joined them, he feels guilty for killing his mother, and wants to protect him, since he's just a kid fighting against powerful and scary enemies. But Ken does find out about what Shinjiro did, and meets with him during the Dark Hour on October 4th. Before I go into this next part, I realize I didn't mention Strega at all. Aside from Chidori, of course, but I feel like it's important to know about them. Takaya, Jin, Chidori, they're Strega, they're bad. Okay, let's move on. Shinjiro and Ken meet up where Ken's mother died. Ken confronts him about it and plans to kill Shinjiro. But Shinji doesn't care that he might die, he's more concerned about Ken. As a professional guy who killed someone once, Shinji knows what it feels like to have to live with something like that, and obviously doesn't want Ken to go through the same thing. But then, Takaya Strega shows up, and I'll just let you watch what happens.
Mom.
Just what was that for? What reason could you possibly have to risk your life for this child?
Shinji!
Your companions? How very unfortunate. The fun had just begun.
Shinji! Hang in there!
Aragaki! Senpai!
Aragaki-san! What's with the long face? Isn't this exactly what you wanted? It's all right. Hold on to that anger. Let it be your strength. You've still got your whole life ahead of you, don't you, kid? From now on, you're gonna have to live for yourself.
But I can't.
Okay. Look after him.
I will.
This is how it should be.
Ironically, after this, the main theme of Persona 3 becomes more clear. Earlier I said it was death, but in reality it is the exact opposite. Persona 3 is about life. When Shinjiro dies, he tells Ken that from now on he has to live for himself. Shinjiro knows what it's like to live an empty life regretting the past, and he knows how miserable it is, so he doesn't want this kid and the people he cares about to end up like he did. During a later scene, Akihiko is mourning Shinjiro's death. Since Shinjiro grew up in the orphanage with him and his sister, whilst mourning Shinjiro, Akihiko realizes that no matter how hard he trains to get stronger, he isn't going to be able to change the past, and that he focuses too much on getting stronger instead of actually protecting and caring about those around him. While still motivated by death, it motivates him to live his life differently, and live on for his sister and Shinjiro.
Rest easy, Shinji. You just watch from there with Miki. I've still got a job to do. Isn't that right?
Later on, Ken leaves the dorms, and Akihiko goes to talk to him, not to bring him back, but to help him and encourage him. Ken finally admits his insecurities, and decides to stop running away. Shinjiro sacrificing his life allowed Ken to start truly living his own life, no longer bound by his hate and fear.
Alright. I'm not running away. I'm not running away anymore. I swear it. Aragaki-san, I'll see this through to the end. Goodbye, Mom. I'll be okay now.
I mentioned earlier about Mitsu's motive being focused on her father, but during Akutsuki's betrayal, her father is killed by him. Mitsuru feels lost and empty. All she wanted was for her father to be happy, but she failed, and on top of that, everything she was fighting for was a lie. That's when Yukari comes to see her and allows her to confide in her, both bonding over having dead dads now. Trauma bonding prevails once again. Mitsuru decides to keep moving forward with her team, for her father and for Yukari.
That's why I choose to fight. I'm going to destroy the Dark Hour and finish what my dad started.
Finish what he started.
That's all I can do. That we can do, right, Mitsuru-senpai?
Takeba. You're right. It's not over just yet. We're going to see this through to the end, for my father's sake, and for yours.
Senpai.
Yukari. Let's face what comes next together. Okay?
Of course.
Man, I love Yuri. Now, the arguably most important character to the theme of life is a character I haven't mentioned yet, despite her being my favorite character, that being Aigis, the anti-shadow suppression weapon. Aigis is my favorite character for multiple reasons. She's funny, she's complex, she's a strong member of the party, she's important to the themes of the story, and she's peak jury material. I do find it kind of crazy that a Japan-made game in 2009 has better gay representation than a lot of stuff does today. And I'm pretty sure gay marriage is still not legal in Japan, so that's kind of wild, not gonna lie. She's a lot different from the rest of the cast due to being a robot. At first, she doesn't consider herself to be alive, and doesn't even understand what it means to be alive. As the game progresses though, Aigis learns more about what it means to live through her experiences with her teammates. At first, her only desire is to protect the protagonist, because they've got that death in them. But later on, her desire to protect the protagonist isn't just her programming telling her to do that, and she also wants to protect her other friends too, since they've bonded through all their hard work together. Aigis' arc is a really great one, since it naturally evolves throughout the game, and you can see as she gradually becomes more and more accustomed to being alive, and it all comes together after her battle with Ryoji. Ryoji arrives in the story very abruptly. He's a very friendly person who seems to get along with everyone, except for some of the boys at the school whose girlfriends will always want to hang out with him, as well as Aigis since she considers him to be dangerous, and also he's talking to her girlfriend as well. Hey! Despite Aigis being wary of Ryoji, the others seem very fond of him and his friendly nature, even if he's a bit too friendly at times.
Well, how about you, Yukari-san? Care to join me for dinner? I know this place on Shirakawa Boulevard. Ow!
It turns out though that Aigis was right to be wary of Ryoji, because he is deaf and the avatar of Nyx, here to warn them about Nyx's arrival, who will cause the end of the world known as the Fall. Ryoji knows the world will end, and no matter what happens, he will be around after the Fall.
I'll say this one more time. If you kill me, Tartarus, the Dark Hour, and the memories of your battles will all disappear. Tomorrow, you'll wake up as a normal high school student. You'll be able to live in peace until the moment of the fall. But if you let me live, you'll spend every waking moment until that day dreading your inevitable death. I didn't want to have to show you this, but I have no choice. Do you see? I am not human. I will bring death to this world until I am finally satiated. There is no need to hesitate over killing me. Now, this is your last chance. Tell me your answer. I understand. As sad as I am to hear it, it's your life. You're free to do what you want with it. I'll respect your decision.
Though Ryoji only shows up in the final act, his character has a huge impact on the characters and even the player. It's hard not to like him unless you're an anti-shadow suppression weapon.
I guess I'm sorry for all the pain and suffering I put you through.
I won't forget that you were my enemy. And my friend.
I guess.
Thank you. This is probably the last time we'll get to see each other like this, but I'll always be watching over you. Well, so long then.
Now to end this segment, I want to talk about the protagonist of Persona 3. Makoto and Kotone, with being different in many ways, and similar in other ways, they both serve the same purpose of being the player's guide into the world of Persona 3. You experience the world through them, and you even begin to feel a certain connection with them. That being said, I don't think either of them are simple player inserts. They both have their own personalities that differentiate them from the self-insert protagonists. Makoto cares about the people around him, despite being apathetic to hide his own sadness, whereas Kotone hides her sadness by being more upbeat and silly, though her sad side is a lot less noticeable that way. There's a bit of a debate on which protagonist is better, but honestly they're equally good in my opinion. I like Utoni a bit more though because I played her route first and of course Yuri. Though there's one thing I neglected to mention during my recap of the story. At the end of the game, when the protagonist closes their eyes and goes to sleep, they don't actually go to sleep. They actually die. On my first playthrough, it took me a few minutes before it actually hit me, and I hit like a freight train. The death of the main character is what really ties the game together in the end. Not only is it tragic for the characters, but also for the player as well. As said earlier, the protagonists are the way you experience the world, and how you experience the characters. With them gone, it makes you feel like you will never see this world again. Well, it's not true, obviously, there are spin-offs and you can replay the game as much as you want, but you'll never experience the game for the first time ever again. It's a great and impactful way to make the player feel the same emotions as the characters in the game. This one moment ties together both the themes of life and death. The death of the main character reminds you that death is inevitable. It's as Pharaoh said,
"Time is something no one can escape. It delivers us all to the same end. You can't plug your ears or cover your eyes."
I always wondered what it really meant to live. Now I think it's following your heart, fighting for what you can change, and accepting the things you can't. Nothing on this earth lasts forever. Every life will one day fizzle out. That holds true for all of us, and as soon as you come to terms with it, you realize something. You see what really matters, and find out what it is that gives your life meaning.
in the final moments of the game, it's shown that the protagonist lived a good life. Though their life was cut short, the story they experienced, the lives they changed, and the friends they made is what made their life a beautiful one. I think it would be easy to end this on a sad or bittersweet note, but that isn't why I made this video. I made it because I love Persona 3. I love the story, the characters, the themes, the music, and all the things that make up what Persona 3 is. It has its problems, everything does after all, but bringing it all back to the question I asked at the beginning of the video, does Persona 3 have the best story in gaming? To me, of course it does. I can't speak for you or anyone else, and I can't scientifically prove that it is the best game. But I hope after watching this video you understand why I feel this way. I love it when a story has a message, and despite not having the most complex message there is, it might just be the most important one. You don't have to save the world to find meaning in life, whether it be spending time with the people you care about, or even just a silly little video game. You can find the meaning of life in anything. So that being said, I'm gonna go enjoy my own life now, because that's what Persona 3 would have really wanted. Also, I gotta get back to playing Persona 3 Duel on my Nintendo 3DS, so see you later.
I've been waiting for this!
You may feel lonely, but you're not alone. In this world, we're right here with you.
Coincidence, I chose to reach destiny. I saw the thought looks caught up, but I'm feeling good. Move destiny, I'm coming through. Partner, we can do this right. You're the fire, I'm the wind tonight. Burning dread, haha, that's right. Baby, 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 we tight. Flashy even when it's bitter. Cannot defeat me even when I lose. I stand right back to the spot, go figure. You don't see what I see, but you don't have to see what I see. Just see how to ride despite my differences. We're still tight.
You're in the
diligent as always. But it couldn't hurt to come...
Hello, this is Elizabeth speaking. I would appreciate it if you could come...
Am I up?
Time to shift!
Just don't come here. Don't you see? A well-oiled machine is only as strong as its weakest cog.
Oh, good. You're all here. I know this is sudden, but the chairman will be coming back.